personal LinkedIn, and as well as we've got a couple of other spots on YouTube as well as Facebook. So wherever you're signing in from, let us know what city, what state, what country. Very excited about today's subject. You know, a lot of the things that you guys have told me is you want more content on how we can move into leadership positions and just grow in our leadership career and even moving into the executive space. So I've got a great person to talk about that with us today. Her name is Miss Deanna Stinson-Reese, and she's a pro when it comes to consulting with large organizations, when it comes to moving into executive leadership. And the other interesting twist, the reason why I wanted to have her on, is she also can help those who are people of color, those who are perhaps from a gender bias standpoint, being able to help those who perhaps are underrepresented when it comes to executive leadership. So she's going to give us some tips from that angle as well. So everyone who comes in, we got a little something for everybody. We want to welcome you in. And Deanna, I want to welcome you to the show. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels good to be back on with you again. It's been a while since we've chatted live, so I'm really excited about today.
Yeah, me too. And actually, the last time we chatted, it was a Thursday roundtable because I had you, I had Tanya, I had Leah. We had a great discussion that day. That was awesome. So I guess I had a little bit of deja vu, or I guess remember, I don't know what was going on in my head. But anyway, let me check my check my comments here. I'm gonna try and keep an eye on both comments. We've got two sets of lives going on through LinkedIn because there we go. Accident. Sorry about that. So we got one that's on HR Maximizer Inc., which is our corporation page. Then we have another running on my personal page. I'm gonna try and keep an eye, guys, on both LinkedIn's. Let us know where you're signing in from. And what I'd like to do too, first, Deanna, is let's kind of set the stage as to why we're here. As I mentioned just a few moments ago, a lot of folks are looking at how do I move from where I am now, let's say it's even a staff position, into some level of leadership. And those who are already in some levels of leadership, how do I make my way into the executive suite and then perhaps even the C-suite, because we know that's where a lot of the decisions are being made. And if we're going to get anywhere close to having an even playing field when it comes to representation, we've got to start getting ourselves represented in all aspects of the organization. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. And to be honest, Rollis, for both folks that are in like an individual contributor role, just looking to move into some level of a leadership, and then those folks that are in those frontline leadership roles and they're trying to take it to the next level and move into the executive suite and even the C-suite. One of the fundamental pieces that a lot of folks, especially underrepresented professionals, fall short in, and that's understanding really how to effectively communicate their value. And so a lot of times we take some of the things that we do in the workplace for granted. We don't really look at the true impact, both directly and indirectly, when it comes to the work that we're doing. And so that's like the foundation with anything, even if you're a business owner, right? I want to kind of speak from all lenses when it comes to advancing yourself as a professional in whatever your career is. Even if your career is being an entrepreneur, you really, really have to understand your value proposition. Like, what value are you bringing? But even more so, how do you communicate that in a way that your audience understands, right? I can communicate to you the value that I bring, but if I don't communicate it to you in a way that allows you to understand that value, there's a disconnect. And so it's still not conveying what I really needed to convey when I'm communicating what I do.
That's a great story. I appreciate you mentioning about value proposition. I think that probably a lot of us don't really stop to even think about that part. So give me an example of a winning value proposition. I don't know if anything comes to mind. I don't know if you want to use your own, but maybe the components of or an example of a very good value proposition.
Got one even better for you. I'll give you a good one and a bad one. I'll start with a not so great one, and I'll use myself as an example. I'm always my first example. So in the work that I do, like you said, I help Black and Brown professionals advance in their careers, right? Absolutely. Now, that is, while that can be viewed as an effective value proposition, there's probably 100 some odd folks that can say that they do the same thing. So that doesn't make me stand out. That doesn't tell somebody, why me? Why should you pick me to help you advance in your career? Now, if I turn around and I say, I help I've helped over 10,000, over 20,000 Black and brown professionals to double their income or to increase their income and make six figures. Now you're seeing the impact of the people that I actually help, right? So if I can say I've helped 20,000 plus Black and brown professionals move into leadership positions, earning upwards of six figures per year or tripling their salaries to reach six figures a year. Now folks are looking at, oh my gosh, like I make $65,000 or $70,000. And you mean to tell me you've helped people to move into the six-figure bracket and you've helped over 20,000 people? Okay, so now you see I got the experience. Now you see the reach that I've had, and now you see the impact of the people that I've worked with, right? And that's just thinking very high level, right? And that's me thinking a general, like elevator pitch, like value proposition, you know, not being too niche.
I like that. No, I like that a lot. And, you know, one of the things that I will equate that to as well is sometimes what I'll see on resumes is they'll say manager or whatever their role was with, let's say, 10 years of experience or 20 years of experience. Well, if you're applying for a job that has 100 other people that also have 10 years of experience, where is the differentiation?
There you go.
Yeah. So I love how you mentioned that, how you put a result with it to add that actually adds some more flavor. Okay. What would your advice be to anyone who's watching, who's in a frontline staff position, no matter what age, gender, demographic, whatever, what have you? What are some core things that you like to teach to everyone that you come across to help them get to that next level of management? I want to start there if we could.
Man, beyond the value proposition and understanding how to communicate your value, you have to actually understand what does it mean to lead. And so a huge part of leading means being able to take feedback. And a lot of us don't like that, you know, not so great feedback. And that's a human reaction. I always like to add on to that. Like people say, I love getting feedback, but no one just desires to hear like you're not doing well. Like, yes, you may value feedback, but no one likes to hear you're not doing something well. And so really practice, what does it look like to be somebody that knows how to receive feedback, knows how to take ownership of when things go wrong, and knows how to empower folks to operate in their level of excellence or in their abilities and their strengths. A lot of folks think that being a leader means to be on the front lines making all of these decisions, when that is part of leadership. But the bigger part and the more impactful part is, how do you motivate others to be successful in the work that they're doing, right? Where they're getting the credit and not you. And then how are you receiving and taking feedback? If you don't know how to do that, you're not going to be very effective in a leadership role. And that is why when companies do have me come in and we're talking about like, well, who do we roll, you know, inclusive management or inclusive leadership trainings to, the first folks is the frontline supervisors, because that first level of leadership is usually where a lot of training is missed. And that is applicable just to anybody in the workplace. When you know how to motivate those around you, that is indicative of a huge leadership quality that is hard to find. I cannot stress that enough. And I've worked with a lot of companies and I've seen it time and time again, not from the folks that bring me in, but when we look at the data, like we do data collection and people are saying how they feel unmotivated or they feel apathetic in their roles. And a lot of times, it's because of the supervisor who they report to directly. So to move into any type of leadership role, you got to really understand what does it mean to be a leader and figure out what is going to be your most effective leadership style in addition to your MVP formula or your MVP, excuse me.
Yeah, that's very effective. And then I love how you mentioned too, because we talked about recognize your value, but also the ability to influence others. And so I think a lot of people put them in the cubbyhole of, well, I'm not a manager yet. I don't have people under me yet. So how am I going to be able to influence others? I don't know if you wanted to speak to that before I ask you my next question.
No, I absolutely do. That is actually the best time to start putting your leadership into practice. When you can do it around folks that don't have to report to you, that speaks volumes to your ability to be able to lead folks that are required to actually report to you. If you can lead somebody, if I can lead, if you and I are working together or something, and I can get you and I'm gonna say Leah and Joanne and if I can get the whole crew rallied up and we're all working collaboratively, how does that make me look as a leader if I can get all of us rallied together and get you all motivated to do something and to do it effectively without trying to be the person that's like tooting my own horn, if you would, right? That speaks more volumes to, let's say, an organization we may be working for. And gratefully, that's how in many cases I've been noticed by different organizations. A lot of it has not been my company's outreach. It's people kind of seeing how I've helped other companies to do certain things and the word of mouth. Because people talk, and it's very, very powerful. Folks can move up into leadership positions because somebody else has communicated in their performance evaluation. Yeah, I did X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if Rollis, really didn't help me out in this way or really didn't motivate me in this way. And now that supervisor is thinking, who is Rollis? And what is it that he does? And how do we get him on board for X, Y, and Z projects since he's so great at motivating folks to perform at such a high level, right? You become a very valuable asset to a company.
Absolutely. Okay, we got quite a few coming in. I just want to say hello to those who came in. Yvette Bonilla, she's coming in from Connecticut. Thank you for being here. I see Susan Leggett Johnson from Maryland. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Returning watcher here. Thank you. And then also I see Farah is here. Thank you also. And also Trevor. Trevor's from Dallas, and I'm trying to think where Farah is. Maybe you can help me remember, Farah. Where are you coming in from? But we actually have quite a few folks from different parts of the spectrum, so to speak. And so I would like to kind of move into that. Okay. Before we go into the executive part, I want to at least, as far as a baseline is concerned, when we look at female representation, when we look at other demographics such as race, age, where do you see a commonality of where a lot of folks kind of miss the mark, where they may be unknowingly holding themselves back? I would like to kind of maybe put some light on that, because maybe someone who's watching isn't aware of this, whatever that is that you've seen come across, that's a missing piece.
Let's see, a commonality across those different identifiers. I would probably say imposter syndrome. And it manifests in folks downplaying what they do. So like intentionally, so you have some folks that just unintentionally may, not know how to add in those extra elements that I did with my value proposition statement that I made earlier. But then you have some folks who intentionally will just kind of downplay what they do. And I've seen it enough to where I now have a very restrictive process for folks to work one-on-one with me, because it's draining to pull somebody out of that mindset. And so I have to really be prepared to work with folks that may have that type of a mindset of, will argue you tooth and nail around. You may say, I could literally ask someone, and I've had this happen to me. I'll say, well, you do X, Y, and Z. Okay. And so how did that help your department? Well, the department, we actually ended up saving, $250,000 that quarter. Oh, great. So you helped your company to save $250,000. Well, no, I didn't do that though. I didn't help them. I just did this part. But that part helped the company save $250,000. Well, no, but I didn't do it myself, and I'm like, see, that's a mindset thing, right? And that goes back to imposter syndrome, and it shows up both from an ageism perspective, because a person may feel like, because of my age, I'm not qualified, or because of my title, I'm not qualified to be able to say I did this in whatever way I'm helping them to communicate that value in the work that they do. When you look at gender, same thing. Women oftentimes digress to downplaying what we do, even to the point where one of the things that women do a lot too is over apologize, right? And because they over apologize, there's like this notion, I've seen a connection with this notion of choosing the lesser versus what it is that you really do, or what it is that you're really worth, or what it is that you really could be conveying. You'll choose the lesser just by default, right? To be modest, or to be humble, or for whatever reason. It's like, no, that's actually not how you how you move into leadership. Okay. Like there's a lot of ways to be humble. This is not one of the places or the times to be humble. And so imposter syndrome for sure, Morales, I would say, and it shows up by folks choosing to downplay what they do on purpose.
That's excellent, guys. In the comments, that if that kind of resonates with you, I'd love to get your feedback on that. And of course, as we move throughout this discussion, I would love to hear your questions or your feedback along the way, because this is very interactive. I'm reading all the comments. I'm looking at both areas. So guys, if you got any of that, feel free and speak up. Okay. I want to also move into from management. Let's say we've already moved into management. We've been there for a little bit, and we're looking to make that next step into more of an executive position. Is there anything different you would tell that person than someone who's going from frontline to management?
Yes. So do I have permission to be very frank and transparent here, Rollins?
Of course, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the response will look very different for a person of color versus a person that is not of color. So I will first flag and name that because a person of color is going to have to prepare in very different ways to move into a higher level of leadership if there is not representation there already. So they're walking into a whole lot more than what a person who is a white male or a white female would be walking into, moving into any position in some type of higher level of leadership when you're moving into that senior and executive level of leadership. So one of the first things I would tell a person of color is, are they prepared for what comes with working in that type of dynamic? And I break down the dynamic, right? The dynamic that they're walking into is potentially, right? This isn't a guarantee, but this is the potential that you're walking into. Every decision you're making being undermined and or challenged simply because of the color of your skin, because you are a Black male, or because you are Indian male or female, because you are a Latinx male or female, because you are not the norm in a senior or executive role in leadership. You oftentimes see folks in those roles and they're tokenized and then they're taxed, right, in terms of what folks is asking them to do. But then a lot of times there's a false sense of power in those roles to where you have the title, you think you have decision-making capability because you probably are looped into conversations. But when it all boils down to it, if the decision you make is not the decision of the consensus or the decision that someone likes or that the masses like, it can easily be, that power can be stripped from you in terms of that decision that you've made. And I've seen it happen a lot of times. And what it does is it's very demoralizing. It's very humiliating. It's very stressful. It's very taxing on a person that has worked so hard for so long to get into those roles and to be a part of conversations and to almost be, it's like being led on and then all of a sudden being dumped. Like if I can put it in layman's terms, that's how a lot of folks feel. And I've experienced it even with being a business owner and, consulting with companies, right? And me having to learn, how do I delineate companies that are being performative or really wanting this DEI work because they're trying to be performative versus the ones that are really serious about making transformational change. And so it is not something that, I don't even experience myself, but I try to prepare clients or, folks that are reaching out and asking questions around like, oh, they're so excited about getting into these senior and executive leadership roles. And we need people in these roles. Don't get me wrong. It's just really making sure folks understand what is coming with being in these roles. Are you really ready for what comes with it? Because you need to be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing this. Okay, so I've got a follow-up question to that. Let's say this is my first shot at this. I'm about to get this executive position. I'm right in line for this position. But I'm sensing there's some potential roadblocks or issues with folks who may be in a position to perhaps kind of undermine, or maybe it's someone who actually would be below myself in the organizational chart that might potentially undermine because they want that position. So would you advise someone to go forward and take the chance on yourself and do it? Or would you advise someone to maybe kind of wait it out and wait for that next shot? I'm curious. What would you say to that?
I would throw the answer back onto them. But what I would tell them is I would give them the pros to both, right?
Okay.
The pros and the cons. So you got the pro, there's a pro and a con to going in, knowing you're basically going into a toxic environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going in with a strategy and you know, I need this role for these specific things, these are going to be my coping mechanism. These are going to be the ways I support myself. These are going to be the ways that I deal with the toxicity that, you know, comes with this role. And I'm going to already have an exit strategy for how I'm going to get to the next level. If you can, some folks can handle that. Everybody can handle that, right? If the person is, let's say someone who maybe like recently dealt with a death of a loved one, a close loved one, maybe they've just relocated and they've gotten this opportunity, but they can foresee these things, I would tell them, here are the pros, here are the cons. From my perspective, something like this may be too taxing for you with everything else you have going on in your personal life. You may not want to deal with that. So that's something you just got to be honest with yourself about and make the best decision for yourself. But I never tell a person not to go after an opportunity if they feel like they can navigate it in a strategic way and keep the end goal at top of mind. Because you're going to be in positions that you don't like. You're going to be in positions or at companies that may be toxic to a degree. And if I'm being truly honest, you know, when you have a disadvantage of the color of your skin or your gender, things that are like kind of visible that you can't hide, like sometimes you got to get what you can to get to that next level. And so it's like, if you're going to take that route to catapult yourself to that next level, be strategic, be honest with yourself about what it is and what it is not. Don't try to make it something it's not. This isn't your end game. This isn't your long-term job. This isn't, you're not coming in to find the job that feels like family. I'm coming in to learn certain skill sets, to be able to contribute in these certain type of ways, and to build my experiences around this work that I'm doing so that I can prepare myself for the next level. And that's really what it's about.
It's interesting. I like that take. So basically, just make sure that you're willing to I guess do the work and be prepared for some level of toxicity there, and you got in your mind that you're ready. So that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that some people want to move into executive leadership maybe for a reason other than being in leadership? Maybe it's the money. Maybe it's the status. Do you feel like that's the case? And do you think in that case, they should, would you advise a person to look at another way to get to the money or another way to get to that goal? Or do you typically help to make sure you prepare that person with the skill set to make sure they are ready for those leadership positions? I'm curious what direction you tend to go when you're consulting someone, helping them.
Both. I do both. So you should want the money. If you're bringing in billions, helping a company bring in billions and billions or millions and millions of dollars. Yes, you should definitely be going in it to make sure you get the money, just like they are going in it to make sure you make them the money. So that's out the gate always. First and foremost, I'm always telling folks, like, you can't feel bad for wanting somebody to pay you top dollar if you're bringing value. You're bringing value. Right. Like, why wouldn't they pay? They're going to pay the next person top dollar if they don't choose you. So why not demand or request that you get paid top dollar? So I'm always going to tell folks, yes, the money should definitely be important to you and to some degree, right? Now, for some folks, being able to come in and make the impact is the top priority. And that's okay. That still is very good. But I still encourage folks, especially of color, because we have such a huge gap in pay. I still encourage them, just because your focus or your priority is the impact, don't let that, it doesn't have to negate the fact that you still should be paid, right? But if in that phase of your career, you're really just about the impact, because that is the case for some folks, where it's, I need the experience, I just really want to be able to make the impact. I'll focus on making sure I make the type of money I need once I get a certain amount of experience. That is okay. But I never try to isolate the money and the impact or the skills that you're building, because they can live together. They don't have to be isolated unless you choose to isolate them. And I think that's important for people to know. They don't have to be isolated at all. They can live together in harmony. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Together in harmony.
Absolutely. It makes 100% sense. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna what I want you guys to do who are watching is I want you to kind of formulate some questions you'd like to ask Deanna, because she's been very generous with the time. And I do want to make sure that we are speaking about things that are relative to your situation. It doesn't have to be your situation. It could be your friend you're asking about. It's like you ask, you have to ask for yourself,
right?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a little fun question and we'll get right back into this. Okay. If you had to choose from one of these two, which one would you choose? Would you rather sing every word you speak or always speak in rhymes? And guys, in the comments, I want you to answer that question too. If you had to, which one would you do?
I'm probably gonna say sing. You said sing everything I say. What was the
Yeah,
first one?
yeah. Either sing every word you speak or always speak in rhymes.
Sing every word I speak, probably.
Okay, why is that?
So I am known to be that friend where, and colleague even, where we can be in a meeting and you can say something, and if what you say triggers a song, I will just break out in song. Like, so I would just break out in song. So you may say, yeah, I was just over in West Philadelphia. I'd be like, in West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground. And they'd be like, you know what? That's just my personality. So I'm definitely gonna say I would be that person that sings everything they say.
I love that. I actually think that a lot. When someone says something, it makes me automatically think of a song, but I don't actually necessarily, break out in song, but it does make me think of one. So maybe I'm going to be like Deanna one day and I'm just going to break out in song.
I do it. It cracks people up all the time. And it's just, it's my personality. And I used to actually not try to, but I used to be cognizant not to do it. Like, if I'm in a meeting with a client or something, but I've actually learned that the clients that I've shown and been very transparent about who I am with, like, they've been with me for years. Like, they will bend over back. They will find work if there's not work, just because they love working with me. And so, and it just adds a little bit of lightness to like the seriousness that we deal with on a day-to-day basis with the type of work that I do. It's always, very serious and trying to put out fires and whatnot. And so sometimes to just kind of have like that brief bit of laughter is very helpful in these meetings that we're always in.
I love that point, and it's make me think. I have to ask you this question. Okay, so I think that some feel like they cannot bring their whole self to work, right? And so we're in a situation where you want to move from that frontline staff up to management, or let's say you're in management and you want to move to executive leadership, and you may be in a situation where you might be one of the first ones of your particular, whatever that is, gender, race, age, whatever, to get into that role. Okay. And so there is a hesitancy to bring our whole selves to work and to just kind of more like fit in with the others around us. So how do you coach people in terms of how much they decide to bring of themselves to work? And I see Robert's here. Appreciate you being here, Robert. Thank you. So what's your thoughts on that?
Man, that's such a good question. So the first thing out the gate is it's a privilege. You have to keep in mind, it's a privilege for folks to know who you are behind like the surface level layer that people see, right? It's a privilege. Everyone is not privy to, layer 5 or layer 7 of you, right? And so you never just want to come out the gate in any type of environment. In my opinion, this is just me personally. There's no data, no scientific data to back this up, but I feel like it should always be a scaffolded approach where it's kind of like you peel back layers as needed as you see that folks are worthy of, being exposed to certain layers of who you are, because you can't trust everybody with who you are, right? And so that's important to be able to discern in any type of situation. And it's something to also really keep in mind, because if that's something that is very important for you to be able to like show up to work as people say, your whole self. I don't use that term because I feel like you're not going to get my whole self right out the gate ever. I don't care who you are, because I don't know that I can trust you to be my whole self, right? So you're going to get whatever part of me is going to be a very true part of me, but it may only be 10% of me until I know I can trust you with 20% and then 30% and so forth, right? And so I'm not one to use that language of like, I want to show up to work as my whole self. Right. But I understand what people mean when they say that. So I don't negate it either. But I just always encourage my clients, to keep in mind, everybody may not deserve to see every part of you. And if you're looking for a company where you can be your full and true self, that's great. But you have to understand that doesn't mean that you can show up as every part of yourself in every way in every environment within that workplace, because everybody's not deserving of it. Point blank, period.
That's a good
So,
point.
So that's my honest and true thoughts around it. But if that's something, I have had folks, like I had one lady, I'm not gonna say the name of the company just because I may have an opportunity to work with them, so I want to put them on blast. But
Right.
she worked for a company, a very well-known company that you all are very familiar with. She was making over $200,000, and she wanted to leave. And she said she doesn't. I asked her, what is the priority? Is it finding a role that makes that much than what you make? I was like, what you was making a lot at this company, are you trying to find a job that makes 270 some $1,000? And she was like, no, that's not the priority. It's just a toxic work environment. I feel like I can't be myself. I feel like, I'm always walking on eggshells. And so she's like, as long as I'm making at least, I'm saying $90,000 to $100,000, I'm okay. And so I'm sitting here thinking, how toxic of an environment is that, or where a person's mindset is to say, I don't mind taking over almost $180,000 pay cut. And that's it's a complete change in your lifestyle just for the sake of being able to kind of almost make friends, and not make friends. Let me not say it that way, but to show up in a certain type of way in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
On a daily basis. And I understand, not wanting to feel like you have to operate in imposter syndrome. You should never want to feel like that. But I've just always been the type of person where it's like I show up to work and, I should be able to, be comfortable being myself, but I'm not trying to show you every part of me. Like, I'm not trying to take you home with me. I'm not trying to go to your family Christmas function. If that happens naturally, that's okay, but that's not what I'm looking for. And so that's just always been me personally, but I do understand that that's important for some people. And so they have to understand that you shouldn't be trying to come out the gate giving the folks at work, or anybody, even people that you meet outside of work, all of yourself right out the gate, right? It should be a very scaffolded approach, because you have to make sure people show you that you can trust them with who you really are. So
that makes sense. Now, I will give a little bit of, by the way, Robert, I like your point. Robert says fitting in is no fun. He likes to do his thing. He's an entrepreneur though.
But, and I am too. I feel you, Robert.
Okay. One of the things that you made me think of is there's a study, and it's been a while since I read this study, but once you get to that level of 75,000 a year, this is in the US, guys. I'm just talking about the US salary. Once you hit about 75,000 a year, when you start making above that, the level of happiness can go up, but it doesn't go up near as much. It's like it kind of scales down. And I'm just wondering if that person just kind of analyzed their financial situation and say, you know what, if I'm making 90 to 100, that gives me enough extra based on where I'm living, where if I can find a better fit for me, I'm going to go there. I don't know. Maybe that's something that she calculated. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's very possible. She was fed up with this company. She was like, the expectations that they have are unrealistic, just around like working around the clock. There was no work-life balance. And so, I was like, I get it. I was like, I don't, I was like, oof. I was like, I may have tried to finesse a little bit, I don't know if I would have walked away from it that quick. But I also keep in mind that I operate from a different lens, because I've now been removed from a traditional 9 to 5 for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I'm used to setting my own terms, and companies work with me on my terms, not the other way around. Yeah. And so that's a certain privilege that I recognize that I have. And so I have to always check it when working with clients, because everybody doesn't have that privilege, right down to the fact of I can post something on LinkedIn, and I have people that still to this day, they will DM me to say, oh my gosh, like this post is spot on. I wish I could comment, but I don't want to get in trouble with my company. Right. Like, or I wish I could like it, but I can't, because I don't want my company to see that I liked it. So it's like, that's just the reality of what it is. And that's why I try to tell people, if you're going to work at a company, to the point earlier, money does not have to be isolated from making an impact and, developing certain skills and experiences in order to be effective in the role. They can live harmoniously together, because you're going to deal with some level of stress, some level of just discomfort being in. The higher up you go, you're going to deal with that just in a company in general. And so it's like, at least make enough money to where you can go and you can vacation. Like, you can buy the things that you want. You can take care of your bills comfortably. If you need a housekeeper, you need a nanny, like you can do the things that you need to make your life as comfortable as possible when you're not at work, or even while you are at work. If you work remotely, at least make enough money to live comfortably outside of the workplace, because the workplace is going to come with some level of stress. I'm doing what I love and I still get stressed out sometimes. And so it's kind of like, that's how my mind thinks about it, to say like, I'm never going to compromise the money with the impact. I know I can have both. So I'm going to always aim for both, because I'm going to live comfortably. Like, I'm going to live comfortably while I'm helping your company make billions of dollars. Like, that's just what it is.
Makes sense. I will say this. I'm going to put my recruiter hat on just for a second for someone who's thinking about this. Is if you're in a situation where your culture is that toxic, like what you mentioned, where you're willing to take $180,000 pay cut, you're going to have an extremely good, I would say, shortened to the point way of explaining it to that new prospective hiring manager. Because one of the things they're going to be looking at is like, wait a second, if this person's making this kind of money and they're willing to take my position, number one, how long are they going to stay here? Are they going to turn around and leave once they find something a little better? Because this is a big cut. Because they might be in a situation you're like you, Deanna, thinking, I wouldn't do that. And so they may think, I'm not sure if I want to take a chance on this person because it's too much of a cut. That's one thing that the hiring manager may think. The other one thing that the hiring manager may think, and I'm just putting it out here, I'm not questioning this person's decision. I'm just saying how it's going to affect someone else who's looking at hiring them, is if they're willing to make that decision, I'm not sure that I want them in this leadership position, because I'm not sure if they're capable of making really good decisions, because I really don't agree with this decision. I don't think this is a good idea. So I'm not sure if I want to hire this person. I've heard those two things literally to my own ears. Okay. I've heard those things in my career coming from hiring managers. So I'm just putting it out there. I don't know if you have anything to respond to that, but those are some things I think that would go through the minds of a potential hiring manager if they saw someone in a situation like that.
Yeah. That is a very valid point, and a couple things to that point. The hiring manager or recruiter would definitely have to have done some serious due diligence research, because unless the person has disclosed that they were making that amount of money, they really have no way of knowing that that's how much money they were making, unless they looked at like salary scales at that previous company, right? Of course, sometimes that stuff is public knowledge. And even still, in most cases, like, folks aren't doing that level of or let me not say most cases. In some cases, that's not happening to my knowledge, where a person is like saying, oh, let me go see how much they make at Microsoft, for example. It's not Microsoft, FYI. I just want to put that disclaimer. It ain't Microsoft. I was just trying to think of a random company that probably have that type of information, like public knowledge, or Meta or Facebook or something, right? Let me, look them up and let me see how much, a instructional design up and see like the pay scale, but you won't know exactly what that person made. And so there is really no way, unless that person discloses that, and a hiring manager actually should not be asking them to say like, oh, what did you make at your previous company, right? And to try to see like what would be a feasible amount. However, if it does somehow becomes the topic of conversation during the interview process, that person does run that risk of someone not agreeing with that decision. If they, let's say you may know somebody, right? Let's keep it just a real example. You could be the hiring manager and you just may happen to know, like, man, the instructional designers over at Microsoft, I know they make at least $150,000. We're only paying $90,000 for this role. But then, unfortunately, that's where a self-check needs to come in, because now you're putting your own personal bias into a decision. And that's why it's important to have inclusive hiring practices in place to kind of mitigate those biases. But they have been. And unfortunately, if you come across a situation where that happens, you can have all the explanations in the world, but a person just may not agree with your decision. And that's just the reality of it. A person may not agree with you just leaving the company. Like, what? You used to work for a Microsoft? You know, like I wouldn't leave a Microsoft. So I think this person has poor judgment. So we're not going to hire. Like that could easily be it without knowing how much they make. So you can't, as a candidate or as a person that's, you know, looking for roles, you cannot predicate your job search on trying to, you know, think about what a person may think or not think. You just have to, you know, decide what it is that you want for yourself and go after it. But I always do recommend, don't leave something until you got something else signed on the dotted line. That's something I was taught just growing up. You don't leave something until you got something else and signed, sealed, and delivered. Not in the pipeline, signed, sealed, and delivered before you walk away from something else. In general, that's just something I was taught. So that's something that I live by. I know that there's certain situations where that may not be applicable to folks, but if at all possible, I think that is always the best course of action, because you just don't know. You just don't know how the search could look. People have biases. People have similarity bias that comes in. They may hire someone just because, you know, they went to the same alma mater. So it's like, go Salukis, or, you know, go Cougs, you know, whatever. So there's so many different things that come into play. And with something like this particular young lady, to your point, you know, just like I was thinking, like, you're going to leave almost $180 on the table. Wow. There's no way you could, like, did you try talking to the manager? Did you try looking at another role in the company? That's a big pay gap, but that also lended itself to say, like, wow, like, what type of environment is this for someone to want to walk away from this? And maybe that's just that person. I don't know what else is going on in her personal life that, you know, would have maybe lended itself for it to be too much for her. So many different factors that come into play, but ultimately you got to make sure you decide to do what it is that you need to do for yourself and understand what you're walking into when you're moving into higher levels of leadership, because you're always walking into something.
Absolutely. That is so true. Okay. Farrah came in. Hey, Farrah, glad you're here. She says, great points. So she liked your points on that. Just now, Deanna. Okay. So before we wrap this up, I cannot believe how fast this time is going. Before we wrap up, I want to get one. Yeah, I know. I want to get one more fun question in, and then we're going to go back to some serious stuff. So I'm going to give you a choice, though. Do you want a favorite question where you tell us your favorite, or a would you rather?
Favorite.
Okay. All right. So, okay, guys, in the comments, I want you to help me with this too. Answer with yours. What was your favorite ice cream when you were a kid?
Ooh, easy. Breyers Snickers ice cream. Oh my gosh, I used to love it. And my brothers used to eat it. Yes, because I loved Snickers growing up, and they had an ice cream that had like Snicker bits in it. So that was my favorite ice cream growing up. And I used to get so angry when my brothers would eat it while I was at work at Foot Locker. I'll be at work and I'll come home and they would eat it up and I'd be so mad. And I'd be like, so yeah.
Okay. So now, okay, let me ask a follow-up. Guys in the comments, let me know what your favorite ice cream was growing up. Okay, now as a follow-up to that, is it still the same or has it changed since you've been an adult?
It has changed. I now like butter pecan ice cream.
Butter pecan. Okay. What flavor? Yes. What brand, I mean?
So Bluebell, because I'm now in Houston, I've gotten on the Bluebell wagon. So I actually really love Bluebell, but I used to love like Haagen-Dazs and Breyers as well. I've learned that like Breyers seems to be more popular like in the Midwest, because I grew up in Chicago. And when I came down south, I saw like Bluebell trumps everything. So now Bluebell is my favorite.
Okay, so here's one thing I'm going to ask you to try, because I love Bluebell too. If you go to a Sprouts, and maybe other places carry it, but it's called Tillamook. Have you ever had that ice cream before? They make the cheese.
Yes. And a yellow or orange.
It is so, I had the cookies and cream. It was so creamy and good. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Okay. Dr. Johnson says Breyers ice cream is hers. She says vanilla flavor hasn't changed, but brand has changed. Okay, very good. Thank you. Breyers vanilla ice cream is her favorite. And then her question is, required leadership skills may be different from the skills of the current job. What is your advice to those wanting to move up, but may have not yet have the skills needed? That's a great question.
That's a wonderful question. I'm actually doing a retreat on that talking, and we're diving into that on Wednesday. So if you're currently in a role, a lot of people take for granted the leverage that they could use in the role that they already have to fill those skill gaps. So for example, if there's certain leadership skills, I'm going to say budgeting. Let's use budgeting for an example, right? If that particular skill set is needed for the next leadership role that you're wanting to go into, I know that people are probably going to feel some type of way about this, but it works. So you can hate it or love it, but I'm
Okay.
telling you, it works.
Hit us with it.
You can volunteer within your company. You can just ask to be put on projects. Yes, it is going to mean that you are working over 40 hours a week, and you're already probably working over 40 hours a week. So that means you are adding more to your workload, but you're doing it with strategy and with intent. You're not just taking on something just for the sake of taking on something. You're taking on something to actually acquire an experience or a skill so you can now speak to that for your next opportunity. You can volunteer outside of your organization. There's plenty of entrepreneurs and small businesses where you can actually volunteer, and that can be you getting that experience, but it is going to almost always require that you're doing extra work. Okay, let me just be very clear. Yes, you are going to be doing extra work, but the question is back on to anyone that has this question in general: how bad do you want that leadership role? Because if your role doesn't require it, it's kind of like people say, well, if no one gives me the chance, how am I going to get the experience? Oh, you can get the experience. You just got to be creative and crafty and getting the experience, because you got YouTube where you can teach yourself certain fundamentals, and then you go and you put those YouTube skills to use either on a project within your company or within another company so that you can actually build that skill set. And with small businesses popping up left and right, you can most certainly get the experience outside of work if you can't find a project within your company. And it doesn't have to be in your department. This is where networking across your organization comes into play. But a lot of people, Rollis, they don't think about that. They don't think about that.
Deanna, I'm telling you, this is such good advice. I can think of at least 3 executives on my show who have said very similar things. How they got to where they were. See, I'm talking about CHRO. I can think of a CAO, and I can think of another CHRO who said that's how they got to where they were, is they volunteered on projects. They got those, and once their name got out there, next thing you know, when they had a position come up for executive leadership, not only did a direct manager know, but also other people in the C-suite knew of this person who was successfully leading these projects and involving, like you mentioned, maybe skills that they didn't personally have at that moment, but they learned it through those projects. That is that's an A-okay. I love that. Dr. Leggett Johnson says, exactly, that is what I did, and it works. Thank you. See, she's another one. I love it. And thank you. See, I like folks like her, because even though she's actually been there and done that, she's helping others by feeding us this question, which I thought was great and allowed us to talk about this. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson.
Okay. So Farrah says caramel vanilla sundae with chopped peanuts and so many more. Oh, that sounds good. I never had that. Sounds good. Yvette Bonilla says pistachio as a kid and Ben & Jerry chocolate therapy now.
Oh, pistachio. I don't know if I've ever tried pistachio ice cream. Interesting.
I have not either. Okay. She says, as far as moving up, Yvette says, as far as moving up, how do you convince someone that you don't have the exact skills, but you can figure it out? Okay. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Y'all will probably not like me because I always have the unpopular opinion.
It's okay. Sometimes we need to hear a different perspective, right? To get us thinking about it.
There's too many people out there that have the experience in almost every, not every entry, but almost every entry or every position. You can't afford to bank your next role on, I can figure it out, right? When you got the next person that went on YouTube and figured it out, or went and volunteered to figure it out, right? So it's kind of like, how bad do you really want it? And while at one point in time, that was okay to kind of navigate conversations like that, unless you're trying to do something internal where it's like an internal move, and even still, actions speak louder than words. right? There's too many resources available out there for people to learn and to acquire skills, too many free classes out there through different like Udemy and all types of different like platforms. So it's like, it's really no excuse to have some foundational pieces around skill sets and things that are needed for a lot of the jobs that are out there. Now, there are some jobs, look, you got to know it, right? Like, so if you're trying to go like for a medical position, ain't no, just give me a try. Like, I need you to know what you're doing before you stick in, what I'm saying, needles in the knee and all of that, right? We need you to exactly. Cut open. We need you to know what you're doing. But or before you working on like a plane or something, because I do a lot of flying. I don't want none of the engineers being folks that said, I can learn. Like, I need you to learn and then you come do it, okay?
Yeah.
So other than that, though, yeah, in most cases, I actually would tell clients, like, don't bank on that. You need to do your due diligence to at least get some foundational skill or beginner level skill and knowledge. Even if you're not like, highly proficient or expert level, you want to have some type of baseline, because there's too many ways to get there, to get to the baseline. And so
I love the point. And from a recruiter side, I'm just putting my recruiter hat on back again. Okay. A lot of times when applicants apply for a job, they don't realize who else is also applying. And so that job, like for instance, we did a C-level search just recently, and we had 100 applicants, right? 100 very well qualified applicants. They are all very qualified. I would say probably 70% of them at least hit the bottom mark of what the requirements of the job were. So you're talking about 70 people who are already very qualified for the job. So unless you just have this amazing relationship with that person who has that decision to make, I think it would put you at a disadvantage to not at least try and hit, like you said, even if it's a basic level of that particular, maybe you haven't mastered it yet. Like one example I would give is like in the area of executives, let's say it's physicians who want to move into an executive position. So they know how to practice medicine. They know that what's best. They know quality standards. They know a lot of things, but maybe they don't have that that experience yet on the business side of running a hospital, right? So there's a little bit of a deficiency there. However, like you said, to your point, what about working on projects that do involve kind of like hospital side, right? Working on those projects, getting exposed to that. I've seen some executives or some doctors rather go into a program, maybe it's an MBA program, to learn the business side of the hospital, so that way they can get some of those foundational skills. And so they are considered for not just a CMO position, even as much as a CEO. I say just CMO. CMO is a huge position, but they're able to get those positions based on that other skill that they lacked. And so I love the what you mentioned on that. Okay, so Yvette, she had a follow-up. She said, I've done classes, but people don't find that as enough. And that is true. That actually is true. That's where your project idea is great, Deanna.
Exactly. Yep. That's what I was just going to say. You have to couple it. There's ways to get the knowledge, but then you still have to put the knowledge to practice. So if there's a deficiency, there's plenty of places where you can go to get the baseline knowledge that you need, but you still have to have the experience. Like there's no excuse nowadays from the perspective of a person hiring, right? That has all these qualified folks, to your point, Rollis, that do have the experience. There's no excuse to not have the experience when there's plenty of ways to get experience. No one has to know you volunteered. No one has to know you didn't get paid for it. 9 times out of 10, they're not asking, well, was this paid or was it unpaid? Like no one's thinking about that. So you can go and work. I'll use my company, for example, right? I have a team of about 7 folks that are paid on my team, but then this year I haven't hired any interns yet. I'm getting there. It's been a process, but every year I do try to bring on interns. Okay. And I actually still pay my interns, right? But I bring on folks that I try to do at least one a year where they can provide us some experience or skill and grow in a certain competency area, but they're providing just some extra manpower around maybe a project or an initiative we're doing during a particular quarter. And I'm still going to compensate them, but it is technically like an unpaid internship where it's like there's no set amount. But if they perform at a high level, I'm giving them money because I don't believe in, I just don't believe in free labor. That's just me personally. So me too. I'm always wanting to, give folks something. But to the point that we're making here, that is an opportunity for someone to come and work for a small business. And now you have somebody who can vouch for the work you did and the impact of the work that you've done, and it's outside of your actual 9 to 5. So as far as the company knows that you're applying for and that you're interviewing for, you picked up a small time, not small time, but you picked up a short-term project, right? Where it was an interim role or something like of the sort, and you worked on X, Y, and Z. These are the deliverables you helped them to meet. And you can put me down as, if it was me, you put me down as a reference. And if they call me, because people don't call references that much anymore for whatever reason. But if they call me, I can speak to the impact. I'm not here to say, yeah, this was an internship, blah, blah, blah. Because if it's a small business, you can be very transparent with them to let them know, hey, I'm really trying to grow and get this experience. And so I just need a chance to do it. And I would appreciate if, when I can put you down as a reference and you can speak just directly to the fact that I came on in this type of role, and ask them for a title. If you need a diversity specialist title, okay, yeah, sure. As long as you're doing the work related, I don't care what you call yourself. What do you want to be called? Tell me. And that's what I'm gonna say. That's what you were. And as long as you do the work, right? As long as you get the work done, that's all that matters. And so
that is an interesting thought.
Get the experience. There's so many ways to do it. It's a sacrifice. I'm not gonna take away from it. It is a sacrifice. I know, for time. Time is a sacrifice, but get the experience. It's too many people that got the experience. So get the experience.
So true. The most recent who I've heard from, and I can tell you this name, Shabu Varghese. He's a CHRO of MD Anderson. He said it on my show in January. And they're about a 20,000 FTE organization. He does amazing work, and he actually won some awards as being a diversity leader. But at any rate, one of the things he said is that's how he built his career. He volunteered on a lot of different projects. They were successful. He got to be known, and then he just kept getting more and more promotions to the point where he is now. So Yvette, hopefully that's encouraging to you, because we want to be an encouragement to you.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for putting that question out there, because not only hopefully this will help you, but hopefully it's also help others as well, to go out there and volunteer for some of those projects. Ellen says it helps to have mentors and champions to vouch for you and your skills and or potential, which I think is great. I think that's true. In fact, since we're at the end of our show, Deanna, tell them how they can possibly contact you in case they have more questions and want to follow up with you or your organization.
Absolutely. So they can definitely find me just by typing my name in LinkedIn, Deanna Stinson-Reese. Send me a DM, request to connect or follow, whatever tickles your fancy. So that's one way. If you're watching on LinkedIn right now, I know my phone I've gotten a few alerts. I see some folks have already started reaching out. So that's great. But you can also just go to my company's website, www.e3-proservices.com. And you can send in our request form to schedule a call and get some more information about either our services, or you can just send a request form in with the question and we can respond as well. So have a whole team that monitors the website form. So you can find me on social media just using my name. It's very simple. I don't have no fancy name. It's not Deanna, at Briar's Ice, none of that kind of stuff, Cocoa Puffs or anything like that, because I like Cocoa Puffs. Nope, it's just Deanna Stinson-Reese. And if you see me on Facebook, I'm not very active on Facebook, I'll be honest. I'm only on there for church services. So if you send me a message on Facebook, you probably won't get a reply very soon, because I don't check Facebook very often, like my DMs or anything like that. So I just want to flag that, because I had some folks reach out to me on Facebook from a prior show I did with someone else. So
okay, well, listen, we appreciate you being on, and thank you, Ellen, for that comment too. That was a great comment. That was a great segue into what we're doing. So guys, thank you for all your questions. Let us know what resonated for you. Give us a little celebrate hand clap, or tag someone if you think they should watch it, or share it. We appreciate you guys watching and spending the time with us today. Hopefully you'll be back to join us again. And Deanna, keep up the great work. Thank you for what you're doing. In fact, I'm gonna let my friend speak for me. Here we go. How about that? You see that? Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And guys, y'all gotta have a great rest of the day from sunny Houston, Texas. Bye, everyone.